In the archives of the British Museum sits a document most historians have ignored. It is a property deed from 1890 bearing the signature of a black woman. The value listed would equal millions in today's currency. She owned townhouses in Westminster. She held investments that generated income while she slept. She moved through London society with a confidence that terrified the establishment. The British Empire spent centuries erasing black achievement from the record, but paper has a long memory. The deeds survived. The bank records survived. The court filings survived. This is the woman Victorian London tried to forget. Her name was Hannah Fawcett, the Victorian heiress. Her source of wealth was property investment and trade connections. Estimated net worth in today's currency was over £15 million. Most people have never heard her name. The history books don't mention her, but the property deeds filed at the land registry tell a different story. Between 1878 and 1895, Hannah Fawcett accumulated a portfolio of London real estate that rivaled the holdings of minor aristocracy. She was born in Jamaica in 1842, the daughter of a formerly enslaved woman and a British merchant. Her father, William Fawcett, was a shipping trader who moved between Kingston and London. He was white. Her mother, Mary, had been freed under the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833. Hannah grew up in two worlds. She spent her childhood in Jamaica, surrounded by the remnants of the plantation economy. She spent her adolescence in London, learning to navigate a society that did not know what to make of her. Here is what most people do not understand about Victorian London. By 1890, there were thousands of black residents in the city. Most lived in poverty in the East End or worked as servants, musicians, and dock laborers. The census records show them scattered across Stepney, Limehouse, and Canning Town. A black woman of means was not merely unusual, she was considered impossible. Hannah arrived in London permanently in 1864 at the age of 22. Her father had died the year before, leaving her a modest inheritance of £1,200. This was not a fortune by London standards. It was enough to live comfortably for perhaps 5 years without income. Most women in her position would have sought a husband. Hannah sought a solicitor. She understood something that would define her entire strategy. In Victorian England, married women had almost no property rights. The Married Women's Property Act of 1870 had begun to change this, but the law still favored husbands. A single woman, however, could own property outright. She could sign contracts. She could accumulate wealth without a man's permission. Hannah chose to remain unmarried. This was not a romantic decision. It was a financial one. Her first purchase came in 1866. It was a small terraced house in Notting Hill, an area that was then unfashionable and cheap. She paid £340. She did not live in it. She rented it to a family of Irish immigrants for 18 shillings per week. The property generated income while she kept her principal intact. But here is the detail that most historians miss. Hannah did not simply buy and hold. She renovated. She hired workmen to improve the properties she purchased. She added gas lighting when it became available. She installed modern plumbing. Then she raised the rents. This was not common practice for small landlords in the 1860s. Most property owners collected rent and did nothing until a building collapsed. Hannah treated real estate like a business. By 1875, she owned 7 properties across West London. The rental income exceeded £400 per year. She had more than tripled her original inheritance without touching the principal. She began to move into better neighborhoods, a townhouse in Bayswater, a commercial building in Paddington. Each purchase followed the same pattern: buy undervalued, improve aggressively, raise rents, and hold long-term. The records show her signature on dozens of legal documents from this period. She dealt with banks, solicitors, and tradesmen. She negotiated directly with tenants. She appeared in court twice to evict non-paying renters. The court transcripts survive. They show a woman who knew the law and used it precisely. She also understood the power of anonymity. Most of her tenants never knew their landlord was a black woman. She conducted business through intermediaries when necessary. Letters went through her solicitor. Rent was collected by agents. This was not shame, it was strategy. Hannah knew that prejudice could cost her money. She removed the opportunity for prejudice to operate. By 1880, her portfolio was worth over £8,000. She had become one of the most successful property investors in West London. She was 38 years old. She was black, she was unmarried, and she was just getting started. The transition from comfortable wealth to extraordinary wealth came through a connection most histories have overlooked entirely. In the spring of 1882, Hannah met a man named Edward Brewster at a property auction in Marylebone. Brewster was a merchant who specialized in West African trade, particularly palm oil and rubber from the Gold Coast. He had the connections but lacked the capital to expand. Hannah had the capital but needed investments that could outperform London property. He needed a silent partner. She needed higher returns. What happened next would transform her fortune and make her one of the wealthiest women in the empire. The partnership worked like this. Hannah provided capital, Brewster provided expertise and contacts in West Africa. They formed an informal syndicate that purchased palm oil directly from traders on the Gold Coast and shipped it to Liverpool for processing into soap, candles, and machine lubricants. The profit margins were extraordinary. Palm oil that cost £4 per ton in Accra sold for £18 in England. After shipping and duties, the return exceeded 100% annually. Hannah invested £2,000 in the first year. By 1884, her share of the profits had returned her initial capital twice over. She reinvested everything. By 1886, she had over £6,000 committed to the West African trade. The money flowed back to London in a river of gold. But here is what the shipping manifests reveal that most historians have overlooked. Hannah was not merely an investor. She became an active partner in the logistics. She arranged warehousing in Liverpool through contacts she had cultivated in the property business. She negotiated insurance rates that were 15% below the market average. She understood supply chains before the term existed. The African trade profits funded her greatest property acquisitions. In 1887, she purchased a 4-story townhouse at 14 Westbourne Terrace in Bayswater for £3,200. This was not a rental property. This was her home. The house had 14 rooms, a servant's quarters, and a private garden. She furnished it with mahogany from Jamaica, carpets from Persia, and silverware from the finest craftsmen in Sheffield. The surviving inventory from her estate gives us a window into how she lived. Crystal chandeliers in the dining room, a grand piano in the parlor, a library of over 400 books, including works by Shakespeare, Milton, and contemporary novelists. She employed a cook, 2 maids, a butler, and a gardener. Her household expenses exceeded £200 per year. She lived like a duchess. By 1890, her combined assets exceeded £30,000. In today's currency, adjusted for inflation and purchasing power, this equals approximately £15 to £20 million. She was 48 years old. She owned property across 3 London boroughs. She held shares in 2 trading companies. She kept accounts at Coutts, the bank that served the royal family. The ledgers confirm her deposits. She was the wealthiest black person in Britain. Her social position was equally remarkable. She attended concerts at the Royal Albert Hall. She subscribed to the opera at Covent Garden. She hosted dinners at Westbourne Terrace, where guests included merchants, solicitors, and at least 1 member of parliament. The invitation lists survive in the papers of a guest who kept meticulous diaries. She dressed in the finest silks from Paris. She wore jewelry that included a diamond brooch valued at £300 and a string of pearls that had belonged to a Portuguese countess. Photographs from the period show her in the formal dress of a Victorian lady of means. Her posture radiates confidence. Her gaze is direct. But Victorian society had limits for a woman like Hannah Fawcett. The threats began in 1891. It started with anonymous letters. Someone had discovered her background. The letters accused her of being an imposter, of having no right to the wealth she had accumulated, of corrupting English society with her presence. They were sent to her solicitor, her banker, and the tenants of her properties. Then came the legal challenge. A distant cousin of her father, a man named Charles Fawcett, filed a lawsuit claiming that Hannah's inheritance had been obtained fraudulently. He argued that William Fawcett had never legally married her mother, that Hannah was illegitimate under British law, and that the original inheritance should have passed to the legitimate family line. The case threatened everything. The court documents reveal the true nature of the attack. Charles Fawcett had almost no evidence for his claims. What he had was racism dressed in legal language. His solicitors argued that a woman of Hannah's background could not possibly have accumulated such wealth through legitimate means. They implied that she had stolen, deceived, or manipulated her way to fortune. The case went to the Chancery Division of the High Court in the spring of 1892. Hannah hired the best barrister she could afford, a man named Arthur Pennington, who had defended merchants and bankers against similar attacks. The legal fees consumed over £800 in the first year alone. But Hannah Fawcett did not retreat. She did not settle. She prepared to fight for every pound she had earned. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Pennington systematically dismantled every claim. He produced the marriage certificate of William and Mary Fawcett, registered in Kingston in 1840 under Jamaican law. He presented bank records showing the original inheritance deposited in Hannah's name with her father's explicit written instructions. He called witnesses who testified to her business acumen, her integrity, and her decades of lawful transactions. The judge ruled decisively in Hannah's favor in June 1892. Charles Fawcett's case was dismissed with costs. The ruling stated that Hannah Fawcett was the legitimate heir to her father's estate and that her subsequent accumulation of wealth was entirely proper under English law. It was a complete victory. But the damage had been done in other ways. The publicity surrounding the trial exposed her to London society. The newspapers reported the case with barely concealed fascination. A black woman worth £30,000 made for sensational copy. Some coverage was admiring, most was not. The anonymous letters resumed with new ferocity. Hannah responded by becoming more private. She reduced her public appearances. She conducted business almost entirely through intermediaries. She continued to accumulate wealth, but she no longer displayed it. The final decade of her life was spent in careful, deliberate obscurity. She died in 1903 at the age of 61. The cause of death was listed as heart failure. She never married. She had no children. Her will, filed at Somerset House, distributed her estate among distant relatives in Jamaica, charitable organizations in London, and the servants who had attended her for decades. The total value at death exceeded £42,000. And then she vanished from history. Her properties were sold. Her papers were scattered. No biography was written. No memorial was erected. Within a generation, Hannah Fawcett had been forgotten. The British establishment had no interest in remembering a black woman who had beaten them at their own game. The erasure was not accidental. It was systematic. Here is how we found her again. In 2018, a researcher named Dr. Caroline Matthews was examining property records at the London Metropolitan Archives for a study on Victorian women landlords. She noticed an unusual pattern of transactions in West London, all traced to the same name, H. Fawcett. The scale of the holdings was remarkable. Further investigation revealed the full picture. Matthews published her findings in the Journal of Victorian Studies in 2021. The article was titled "The Invisible Heiress." The discovery sent ripples through academic circles. Historians began piecing together Hannah's life from scattered sources, shipping manifests, court records, bank ledgers, census data, and the diaries of her contemporaries. The picture that emerged was of a woman who had mastered the financial systems of the British Empire, while that same empire denied her basic humanity. Her story connects directly to the black wealth we see in London today. The women profiled in our modern lists, the Patricia Brights and Valerie Morans and Tsitsi Masiyiwas, are walking paths that Hannah Fawcett cleared over a century ago. She proved that Black women could accumulate wealth in the heart of the empire. She proved it could be done through intelligence, strategy, and relentless discipline. She proved that the obstacles were not insurmountable, but her story also reveals what was lost. How many other Hannah Fawcett's were there? How many Black entrepreneurs, investors, and property owners were scrubbed from the record? The archives hold traces of others, names on deeds that have never been investigated, signatures on contracts that historians have overlooked. The work of recovery has barely begun. Hannah Fawcett lived in a world that told her she was impossible. She responded by becoming undeniable. She accumulated wealth that would equal millions today. She defeated her enemies in court. She lived in a mansion and wore diamonds, and when history tried to erase her, the paper trail she left behind was too strong to destroy completely. The lesson is not just about the past. It is about what we choose to remember and what we choose to forget. Every fortune has a founder. Every dynasty has a beginning. Sometimes the beginning is hidden in plain sight, waiting in an archive for someone to look. Hannah Fawcett was the richest Black woman in Victorian London. She deserves to be remembered. Now she will be. Which hidden history should we uncover next? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe for more stories of the fortunes that built empires and of the people who were written out of the record.